Welcome to the Tech Lounge with me, Christian Schiller. Now, those of you watching on video will notice that, well, I'm experimenting with video. Those of you listening on audio won't notice these things, but I will comment that for the video audiences, that cozy atmosphere that I've tried to have with the Tech Lounge is not quite here right now. We'll come to that at a later date, I think, because most of you are listening to the audio anyway, but I'm experimenting with the video. And this interview was actually filmed as a video at PyTorch Con Paris earlier in the year. And on this episode, I spoke with Peter, who works on the Docling project, which is a fascinating tool that converts documents into structured data. Something I actually am a bigger lover of tools like Pandoc. So sort of connect those two together, you have a really fascinating pipeline. And this is, of course, very relevant in AI tools and LLMs. Structured data is, well, there's different discussions on how useful it is, but it's useful in some places. Anyway, before we begin, what better sponsor for this episode than Mermaid Chart? Mermaid is a very popular text-based image tool, graphing, charts, that kind of thing. And Mermaid Chart is the commercial product where you can collaborate, you can export, you can share, and all sorts of other features too. If you're interested in finding more, then head over to go.christianschiller.com/mermaid chart. Docling. Yes. It's a great name.
That's where it all started.
I think when I first encountered it, it's one of these things I looked at it and I thought, for someone like me who does a lot of document processing, I do documentation work, that's my day job. I also maintain some Pandoc related stuff, and I kind of looked at Docling and I was like, I think I should really love this, but I will admit I couldn't quite figure out what it was.
Right.
So maybe give me the pitch of who Docling is, because it does a lot. So what is Docling and who's it for? And
I think Docling is kind of originated really about, or where it really became viral was the whole RAG business like 2 years ago. And fundamentally, I think what we focused on was simplicity and the developer, right? So like if you look at it from 30,000 feet, what you really want is I have a bunch of unstructured documents, bits and bytes, right, in different formats, and I want to handle with that in Python as easy as possible. So fundamentally, the bridge you want to make is, okay, I can point it to a source, and I will always get a structure back that is the same, right? That's fundamentally the thing. Now, what comes all in the middle is, okay, if you say I can have many formats, then obviously PDF is one of them, which is a hard one. That's actually why it's so popular, because everybody has to deal with it. But
PDF is not as standard as people
surprisingly difficult to deal with, right? But then everybody's like, and what? Then it becomes like the whataboutisms, like what about docx? What about PowerPoint? What about my Excel sheets? What about ASCII doc for Red Hat? What about, it's then the whataboutisms, and then you start adding and layering that. And then because I think that ultimately the design is good, we can very easily add whatever, features we want. Like for example, now like, okay, email formats, we want to add, we have audio, we already have, we're working on the video part. Like, so you can basically do your Teams meetings, we just scrape the audio and you pay. But at the end, you always get a Docling document on which you can do operations, right? Yeah. That's the fundamental.
So it's a sort of structured document, standardized structured
it's not structured,
document analysis.
It's standardized, right? And actually this fits into an interesting concept which we're now doing through the Linux Foundation, is to say we're going to release that in the next couple of weeks. Basically want to build like an ISO standard for unstructured content. So standard
for unstructured. I like that.
Yes, but then there's another component to it which is very important, which is like LLM optimized. Okay. So in another word to say, it's like optimized for tokenizers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because LLM optimized can mean many things, but basically you say, okay, if I have bits and bytes with content in it, and that's I think the key part, have content in it, how can I actually represent that in an efficient way that is general enough to deal with any type of unstructured content, but specific enough so that we can start doing optimizations and that the structure can naturally evolve from that. And like there, I would say like the end part is, imagine that I have very complex tax forms or stuff like that. How do you represent that? Because there's a lot of content there, but the structure, if I ask anybody to do it, everybody comes up with a different structure ad hoc.
Yeah.
And so the idea really is, okay, how do we actually standardize that across the board, make an ISO standard of it, that the entire community as well as the industry can actually profit from that and leverage that.
Yeah. But the ISO standard for, because I think there are ISO standards for certain sorts of documentation, isn't there?
Yeah.
So, but you're looking to make a standard of what?
So we're looking to make a standard so that I can say on the left-hand side, I have content. So content in various formats. Again, think like Teams meetings, recordings, PDFs, tax forms, images, whatever, bits and bytes. Right? How can I get not the representation, but the content represented? That's number one.
Yeah.
And you can say, yeah, but then just use HTML Markdown. Yeah, but HTML and Markdown doesn't have all the features. And HTML can be anything.
Yeah.
So then the question is, how can we actually limit this? The whole point is actually to limit the scope.
Okay.
But flexible, and so that's a tension field, right? So you want to limit the scope, but you want to be flexible enough to do any type of content. And that's where it becomes interesting. So you have to make decisions, and those decisions define in the ISO standard.
Okay. And because has it always been an IBM project?
It started out as an IBM project, yes, and so now then last year in March we donated that to the Linux Foundation, and now we're working with many partners.
And what was, in the initial stages, what was IBM hoping to do with it? Because I sort of feel like it seems something that is quite useful, but not necessarily like IBM's kind of...
No, it is, because the point is there's a lot of at the end of the day, you want to build large data platforms, right? Yeah. And your entry point... The data platforms typically break down into two different components. One is the structured one and one is the unstructured one. Many data platforms, they do unstructured or they claim to do unstructured, but fundamentally it's very, very, very thin because everybody hits the same problems that we hit. And so what we are trying to do with Docling is to have a very structured approach, but because it's structured, but because there's so many different variations and we need so much input, like have you thought about this, the what about this, right? We need to have that community to allow us to navigate that.
Okay. We are here at PyTorch Paris.
Yeah.
So you said earlier around trying to LLMify these documents as well. Is this why we're here? Like, what's the reason to come to PyTorch?
Parts. So basically, like our team, so Docling is a framework itself, so that's very important to realize. But the framework does two things. It has like third party, like DeepSeek OCR, GLM OCR, whatever. We incorporate all of those, but then we are also building our own models. Okay. So Docling is touching two different components. One is how can we, when we have our own models, how can we make them super efficient? So there's a whole sub part of my team that's working on building new models.
Models for Docling or models using Docling?
No. Okay. So basically for Docling. So basically visual language models or VLMs basically will take page images or any type of images and then translate that into content. And so the whole idea that we're building now is we take our ISO standard that we didn't have. We already played around with that in small Docling with like what we call doc tags, but we graduated that now into Docling. And we're going to build those new models basically so that they natively spit out that new ISO standard. So that's actually one part, and there we really want to use, VLLM, PyTorch, all of the, Triton kernels, etc., to optimally run those things, right? And then the other part is as we are building more and more the content representation, so that new ISO standard, the question that what we are now playing around with is if we are starting to kind of naturally pre-train models in that new ISO standard, not anymore, okay, I have Markdown, I have some scraped stuff, right? Take all of the training data that we have, map it into that structured representation with the extended vocabulary. Are we going to have, by default, actually better models? I mean, think about DeepSeek OCR. The thing was like, okay, we add a thing, stop think, and start think, and we let it just think there. Fine. Yeah. But it's like two different extra tokens that you add. For the rest, it's basically just letting it chain of thought and then you do your thing. So then the question, so we have these two parts. We build our own models, but we're also trying to figure out how can we put more structured in the unstructured, or the, more formatting in the unstructured, so that we can actually give more intelligence to it. That it's not just a string, right?
And I mean, actually coming back to where I started this saying, I'm sort of familiar with more old tools like Pandoc. I mean, technically speaking, I suppose, could you do something like, Docling has parsed a bunch of WAV files for me, and I would like to, via Docling and some other tool, output them to PDFs. I mean, it's something I could. I mean, I suppose you could do that with other tools as well to a degree, but so it's sort of taking
kind
that.
Of like this. So we definitely. So once you have, so that's actually the interesting thing. So we have Docling has Docling as the library is really pure about the conversion and bring it into that pydantic data structure, which we call a Docling document. But then we have a very thin package that is just dealing with the content, which where we define the data structures. And there we have all kind of transforms, and one of the transforms is serialization.
Okay, yep.
And then the serialization is like, okay, do you want to serialize it to PDF, to HTML, to Markdown, to whatever favorite format you have? Yeah. So you have like a funnel in, like the most representative, that's again where our ISO standard is going to live, and there's going to be a funnel out, which is whatever format you want.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. I sort of feel like, has Docling been embedded in other applications? Yeah.
It gets like, so we reached a couple days ago, like 250,000 downloads a day.
And there's also
there's a lot of integration. We see a lot of downloads, so it's going pretty well.
Yeah, because you come to the page and you see these sort of things that could be quite helpful for you, but the getting started stuff is all about bringing it into code. It's not something you just download and run yourself, really. Yeah.
I mean, the point is, like, so you have a CLI, but we're really targeting like developers. We are probably going to build quite a few, I would say, like demonstrators. Like, for example, I'm working on a nice demonstration for oil and gas, for example. Okay. For finance is going to be one. A bunch of those use cases, essentially, where people can start. There is the code. There's also going to be a public SaaS offering, so that you can very quickly convert, that you not always have to run locally. But that also people can start thinking, okay, like, what is next after this, right? Because the key part is we've already started to launch this. So we have like the Docling agent that is going to be able to reason over your documents. We have Docling graph, which is going to start building ontologies. And then the question becomes, okay, I have all my local documents. We're going to be able to build basically a public ontology with like translation rules. And now you can start saying, I process all of my local documents. I will see what hits in the public ontology, what is actually special about it, etc., etc. So there's a whole pipeline of capabilities and tools that will be able to be built. But everything builds on how stable that conversion is and how you know, like, because if you screw up there, to fix it upstream is infinitely harder. So if we nail this thing down well and it becomes very fast, very simple, the LLMs can actually naturally understand that, then the rest is going to become increasingly easier.
We'll come back to that accuracy in a second, because we refer back to a little bit to your talk and some of the things you said earlier. But it's interesting because I start, if you have Adobe Acrobat, for example, it has now a chat to the document thing. If you use Notion and its kind of custom formats, you can do it there. If you use Google Workspace, you can kind of do it there. I'm sure Microsoft Office, I don't really use it, but I'm sure it has similar, et cetera, But the problem has always been with all knowledge management has been, but I don't have stuff in those places. I have stuff in those places plus all these others. And
plus I think, and that's also something we really want to address, is that's all cute. And yes, I mean, cute in the sense of like, these are all products, right? They all kind of live separately. What we are developing here is not like yet another product like that, yet another rack, yet another whatever. That's all fine. We're developing the engineers in a manufacturing company. We're targeting the back office for large hedge funds. We're targeting, like, they don't need yet another Copilot.
No.
What they need is a tool that they can scale, that they can locally develop, say, yeah, it works, check mark. Secondary, there is a super cheap option for all of the non-confidential stuff. I don't need to set that up. I have an API key. I just force it. I can also run for the confidential. I can run it locally. Great, That's kind of the tools you will want to have, right? And I think also if you see like all of the agents, Cloud Code, all of these things, they're starting to use more and more CLIs, right? So you've seen like you had MCP going up. Now so we have just a native CLIs. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to you can run things locally, you can have like an API, and all of these agents, what they really want is they want to have code to run.
Yep.
Be it in your own cluster, on the cloud, but they don't want to have, I think there's going to be more agents running than people, right?
I think it's already probably the case. I think I saw
maybe
I saw something
who
that
you listen to.
apparently, like maintaining open core clusters in China has basically become everyone's pastime, and there's a lot of people in China. So
sure. I don't. I think it's going to be a difference between I'm saying maybe because I've also seen all of the Windows. What is it from the 2000s? Windows. There's still like an enormous amount of Windows XP that's running. So is that really gonna? You see, like there is a big backlog of things that is keeping the whole economy running. So I think there is the fancy stuff, and then there is the backlog, and not to be underestimated.
It's funny in terms of that kind of like knowledge graph. I know you're a level beneath this, but from a kind of more consumer...
I started actually in a knowledge graph business.
This kind of perspective, I think I have two applications on my laptop here that start to make me think of this. One is better known, which is Obsidian. And then through a variety of plugins, you can kind of do elements of this. You kind of bolt it together. You can put different documents in there, Markdown, wiki-style links and references between, even paragraphs in a PDF, and then you can add on some AI chat. And it's a bit sort of cobbled together, but it kind of works. And there's another, mostly Mac and iOS only Devon Think, which is this kind of, you can put all sorts of media into it, including audio, and it will transcribe it. And then you can connect it to local or remote models and do similar things. And it maintains these links. So it's like, an annual general, let's say a financial summary of the year can reference a timestamp of a WAV file. And this is where it kind of gets interesting and where things like Docling come in, because that was, I guess it was possible before, but it wasn't as possible to actually reference completely different sorts of media.
Correct. Correct. And also, again, like, this is also the frustration. Like there's like a lot of tools out there, but there is never a tool where you say it does it really well enough that I don't have to worry about adding another regex, adding another this, adding another that. It's okay, but it's not okay. You see what I'm saying? Like there's like a very thing that we are now working on. It's super stupid, but for example, like for ourselves to really make it super fast, we start to now hitting a bottleneck of converting PDFs to images to then run it through VLMs, right?
Yeah.
So I just merged in a few new capabilities that we've been working on to actually say, like, can we actually parallelize that? And because the current PyPDF that is currently being used, I think it's developed by Google, if my memory is correct, it's not thread safe. And it's doing a PDF to an image in 20 milliseconds, which is all fine. But now I have a 200-page document at 20 milliseconds, and I cannot parallelize it. So you do the math, it becomes very expensive, right? It's becomes 4 seconds. Okay, so now it's 4 seconds just to do the images, not even to do the inference. But my GPUs are much faster. So my GPUs are now... So we're actually doing a lot of this very, very, very stringent work. Also, like all the ligatures, all of these weird things, like FFI, for example, there's like a specific Unicode character. Yeah, but I don't want to have that Unicode character in my text when I'm done going to put it into a RAG, because then the encoding is... So you need to normalize it. All of this little stuff, we just want that the developer that is dealing with content, like bits and bytes, doesn't deal with that,
Let's actually come to that, because the title of your talk was Teaching PyTorch to Read Your Worst PDFs, which I kind of like, because you already mentioned PDF is not as standard as people think. It's got a lot better It used to be that you would get a text PDF and it was just an image, which is not the same. Yeah. But now OCR in PDF tools has almost become a commodity.
It's very slow.
For sure, but it's fairly widely available. But then also you have things like audio. I mean, audio can be all sorts of qualities.
Audio is the same
and accents
thing, the same. And also the problem with PDF is depends also what is the underlying. Again, it comes down to the underlying technology stack, right? So people say, this programmatic PDF, I can take the programmatic stuff out. Okay, we've seen that. Then we've seen but people sometimes use drawings for text.
Yeah.
Okay, so now if you're just using programmatic, but you have text drawings, then you will not catch it. You fail.
Even something like LaTeX. I mean, I don't know.
LaTeX, LaTeX is.
Or equations. I guess is a better.
All of this stuff is there and not there, and you want to just deal with it, right?
I was actually
it's like maybe the title of the talk should just be like Docling deals with it. That's what the bottom line.
I was even interested because you list things like PowerPoint files and Excel files.
Yeah, Excel. Yeah.
And there's a degree of especially an Excel file, and people use Excel for all sorts of things. Yeah. How do you infer any kind of context when you come out of it? Infer in the English meaning of the word more than the model.
Context in which sense, basically?
Well, because a spreadsheet could be someone's to-do list. It could be a financial document. It could be.
This is where I think. So we have the concept of the Docling documents. That is the content as is.
Okay.
So because we don't want to start fiddling with it, and we had that long discussions in the team itself. Here's a very funny one. If you take a docx one, like a Word document, some people try to abuse bold and size of the thing in order to do section level headings. Kind of makes sense, right?
So I don't
now
like
the
Word.
question becomes: should we infer it as a section, or should we say no? This is the way it's done. This is just formatting.
Yeah.
And then you have the actual section, because you can also in docx say this is level 2, level 1, level. Okay. So there we said, look, we really follow what it is. So we will propagate the formatting if we can do it. But if you make it fat and bigger, and then afterwards a normal text, but you say that that's a paragraph, and that's the paragraph.
Yeah, okay.
Right? So I think we need to, you have to make a decision, and we really wanted to stick very much with this is the content.
You're not proposing, if you're parsing you mentioned ASCII doc, DITA, these kind of documents that are very, very strictly defined, but Word is...
It can be everything. Then the question becomes, so we kind of do that in PDF because there is nothing, so you kind of try to default. But the point is we're trying to really focus on the content. Now then there comes the secondary part, which we call enrichment. So once you have the content, then you can start doing, and you have a nice data structure, which basically we have a tree structure, which we call this Docling document. Then the question is can I add stuff? And this is where we have this concept of meta, where you can add summaries. For example, we have an image, you have a chart.
I was going to wonder how you did images,
You, for example, have a line chart or a bar chart. Now you can actually apply models to directly get the tabular data out of it. So it's going to apply a model to generate the tabular data. It's going to apply a model to create the Python code to recreate the figure.
Okay.
So this is what we then call enrichments, because basically you're adding something on top of it, stuff that you would like to have, but it's not the content.
Yeah.
So we separate content from, enrichments or deduced capabilities.
With the images, actually you do list images here as well. Is it a...
So that's for example, this is the classical case. So if I take a TIFF, which is just coming from a scanner, then we will run a normal PDF like you do OCR, etc. And then additional stuff we will try to infer if you activate those.
So you recognize modes, what the image is. You don't necessarily keep the image. It's more this was an image of blah, 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 blah.
So we do... So again, in the document, you can have page images, so you can actually encode also the image in the doc, so that you have everything effectively.
Binary.
Exactly. And then we
interesting. And with actually no, I see no vector images. That would be.
Yeah, that's another one. So SVG would be another one of those. Yeah, we're not yet doing it, but it's going to come.
That's the ...
So right now we did a lot of work now on LaTeX.
Yeah.
So at least the community did.
I didn't even
LaTeX.
notice it. Now I see
and
it.
they do, like, for example, Tixi is now a whole thing to get actually all the code for images, for example, in Tixi.
It's super interesting.
It's a whole.
And web,
it's a whole community now that's
web
working
VTT.
Exactly.
The audio is an interesting one.
Yep.
Like we both, I'm gesturing at someone who's off camera. We both have issues with transcribing audio from different accents. Strange words. All these tools, like Whisper has made text audio transcription
so for example,
available.
Like Whisper is under the hood here.
Yeah.
But now in principle we can run, like, I think there's a new Nematron.
They're
model.
all massively.
We can basically write all of these different models, and you basically choose which model you want and just run it and be done with it. Yeah.
All right. I mean, it's interesting because it seems on the surface like, but there's actually so much to it,
But this is the point. Right? So the whole thing about it is like with all of these good my personal opinion is there must be a lot under the hood, but it needs to be under the hood.
Abstraction is a wonderful. This is kind of making something very complex.
Something very, very complex, a problem that's very complex that everybody deals with, that has an elegant solution, but that is easy to use. Right? That's kind of the whole point. If you have to start pulling out the screwdriver nobody wants to do that. We don't have time for that. Right? Yeah, that's the whole point.
Okay. So aside from the kind of migrating the project to the Linux Foundation, I mean, open source, so I'm guessing it's there if I wanted to find it, but what's kind of on the roadmap for the next few months?
So on the roadmap, many things. So basically we're building our new model. So first and foremost, we want to launch our ISO standard. That's going to be a big one because I think that kind of solidifies finally. There's also a lot of work in governance, and it will allow us to finally, once and for all, like, set the standard of what actually the content should be represented as. So that's one. Secondary, we're going to roll out a new model that is trained basically on that ISO standard straight.
Okay.
And so we have already had some indication that if you do that, basically we get a lot better performance out, better quality as output. Then there's a few other side projects that we're doing. So side projects. One is the agent. So we basically once you have good conversion, now you can start doing good reasoning on top of it. So that's basically an agent that will start to help you with writing, with editing, with doing actually. So basically one of the interesting cases there is, instead of, I'm sure you're familiar with RAG, right? But one of the things that I always really hated was the chunking.
Yeah.
The chunking I find doesn't make any sense to me. So basically we have now a chunkless RAG. So basically what it's going to do is going to take the tree structure and it's going to start reasoning over it. So you take your document or multiple documents, you have all the summaries. Now you have a tree structure over it. And so it's going to start reasoning over the summaries. Which sections should I read, which not, if it's actually answering the question or not. So that's kind of going to be our agent. That agent is then going to be used. It's already released in the Docling graph. So then you can start reasoning over, I have documents now, I want to have entities, relationships. How does that coincide with actually a public ontology? And kind of really work at the graph scale of things to actually say, okay, your documents, like let's say 20% of the entities are not defined. Then you have maybe 40% of entities that are defined but are not found in the original but can be translated. And then you have maybe another, I don't know how many percentages that is already in a public. But then you can start saying, okay, now I have a public ontology that the whole community can develop on. And I can actually see in my company, in my organization, what is the delta? Which is very nice because now I can take all my documentation, run it through and say, okay, this is actually the delta. Like if you then do, for example, all the patents, do all of you can really start judging like, okay, what's my mode of my company essentially?
Yeah.
Right? That's going to be also very important. And then what is like the specialty that I can actually do? What can I actually add to it? So that's another project. And then towards the mid of the year, what we really want to do, that's always something, but I would like it much earlier, but it takes really a lot of time and effort and dedication, is we really want to have we're going to launch towards the mid of the year a full evaluation framework of all the models, all the packages, everything in a unique way together with some partners of ours. such that we can do all of the evaluations properly and we see where we rank at. And but companies also themselves, they can basically say, okay, I can be part of that ecosystem. I can build my own data sets. I don't have to rely on some data set that people all fine tune on, and so I don't know anymore. I build my own data set. There's going to be a platform like with Human Signal and Label Studio. I can build my own data set on my documents of all the possible correct ways to annotate. This is the consistent one that we use. And then I can connect with maybe other people that have human annotators that can actually annotate it by humans. I spend a few coins. I now have my data set and I can evaluate. And I can really choose this is the right way for me. Yeah. A new model comes in. Does it improve on my data set or not? I don't care about OmniDocBench. I don't care about because all of these data sets mean nothing because everybody's training on them. Yeah. Really. That's the fundamental flaw that we currently have. Yeah. And even if they're not explicitly training on them, because they're all scraping and all of these data sets come in the real world, you might not even know that you're training on them. So it's really like so what you really want is that every company can build their own data set that I don't have to look at. So I'm not going to be there like you've given it to me and we fine-tuned it. That we want them to be completely independent. Evaluate on it and then see what your performance is. Yeah, right?
I kind of
so a lot is coming down the pipe.
I sort of feel like I have I don't know how plausible it is to run something like this locally on a computer like this, but
you can.
I kind of feel like if I could hook this up into something like Obsidian, that would be super interesting. Yeah. But maybe complete overkill. But
we can talk offline to do it. Like, it's like this is kind of what we do all the time. So we have a lot of third-party people that we're talking to. Like, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, sure.
It may even exist. I don't know. There's always this this world of like being able to talk to your information. It's kind of been promised for even Google, that's sort of what its initial thing was. And it was sort of there, but it was a different kind of thing. And now actually we are getting to a place where it is
here's what the
kind of possible.
Here's what the real problem is. Give me all of your data and you can talk to your data. Yeah. And nobody wants to do that.
We think we do. Reason. We think we do, but once we actually get to it, it's like, oh.
Exactly. Like it's okay. And then it's, at the end of the day, I think this is maybe also a bit more of a European angle. There is a certain level of like, hey guys, we have to be serious, right? We cannot just hand over everything. And it's also, the other part is you really want to have tools and then solutions built on those tools that are going to give you that edge. Because if everybody is using the same tools from the same hyperscalers, yeah, okay, but how are you going to differentiate, right? So there is that too, right?
Yeah. Well, it's super interesting. I mean, when I actually, what was that was the talk topic that we had at FOSDEM. Even when I saw that, I was kind of fascinated to experiment some more. And now I'm even more fascinated. So maybe I'll do a follow-up video to this interview of actually like experimenting with it somehow.
100%.
I'm kind of thinking the whole, I don't know. I'm kind of coming up with a bunch of ideas I want to try, but I'm not sure how actually realistic they are. So
we're going to try to build a very nice oil and gas application.
Okay.
The nice thing there is it can be also basically I kind of vibe coded the whole Google Earth and then like how can you analyze this and that. So I think that's something very visual that will catch the eye and stuff like that. But there's plenty of these like applications that we want to actually build now, just to show what the possibilities are and to let yourself dream, like, oh, I can do this, I can do that. And I think this is going to be the nice thing, again, why we are building a lot as tools is you can start thinking if you have those fundamental tools that deal with the ligatures and all of this other stuff you don't want to deal with, but you can think at a higher level. You have your coding agent, your favorite coding agent. You put one and one together, you have more than two,
Yeah. All right. Super interesting.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you.
And that was my interview with Peter, filmed live at PyTorchCon in Paris earlier this year. If you've enjoyed the show, please head over to christianschiller.com/podcast for more information. Of course, you can also find that information in the notes in the YouTube video field and If you're watching the video on a podcast application, also there too. But that is also the best place to find them all in one place. Please join me next time, and thank you very much for joining me.